Hello, my name is David Daniel Ball, and these are the headlines for Thursday, the 19th of February, 2009. Today is the anniversary of the bombing of Darwin in World War II. It was bigger than Pearl Harbor, 4 days after the fall of Singapore. Backburning continues as horror heat conditions loom again. Police charge second man over harbour boat crash. Two-face court over Australian 7-hour rape ordeal. Obama chimp cartoon sparks outrage in the United States. Richie Benaud confirms all called stumps in 2010. Some may miss the $900 handout, says the Australian Tax Office. Kings of Leon frontman sells house to escape fans. Chopper goes down in sea, all are rescued. Sydney woman fights back over bag snatching. Teenager to be charged over West Sydney stabbing. Second Knox teacher on child sex charges. Virgin job cuts just the beginning of airline plunge, says expert. And in comments, water everywhere. There's water falling all over this country, but barely a drop is being harvested. And it's a national disgrace, according to Alan Jones. It's nice the Sydney Morning Herald is finally recognizing the dangers of Rudd's stimulus package, but they should have been awake earlier, according to Alan Jones. From Piers Akerman, when will Labour learn to hit the right target? The Rudd government's misguided policies make the fabled gang that couldn't shoot straight look like marksmen. Well, Piers, putting aside my own agenda, I know firsthand what Piers writes about, and it is true. A major problem with education is that a substantial number of teaching staff willingly accept the second-rate logic which underpins ALP ideology. As an example, a class of mainly Vietnamese Cambodian Year 10 students are lectured by a social science teacher on their upcoming external tests. The relief teacher sits mutely as the school teacher tells the kids that Whitlam gave rights denied by the Conservatives. Whitlam gave the vote to Aborigines. The peace movement was right to oppose the Vietnam War. Keating was a great economic reformer, and so on and so on. Thing is, the school performed abysmally in those tests. They did okay in mathematics, but not in those tests. Not the subject being lectured on. Another school nearby held a special Sorry Day ceremony in which the song Treaty was played in place of the national anthem. A bus driver reported seeing a student showing a knife to his mates, and the bus driver was cautioned for his trouble. The school is still in a sorry state, even though it made badges for the special day. Textbooks write about global warming as fact, not a theory, and provide statements suggesting opposition to global warming is unacceptable. Science textbooks oppose nuclear energy. Textbooks, for example, social science, refer to European invasion and stolen generations, provide examples of people who weren't stolen or invaded, and then call it evidence. When Rudd was running in 2007, it was said inflation and interest rates would rise under an ALP government. The high-achieving student, now studying to be a lawyer, exclaimed, "But that is a lie! We studied that at school. Interest rates and inflation do not rise under Labour." I know how to teach these students so that they can achieve well by their standards. It means they go to class, prepared to learn. Disruptive students need to be effectively managed. The teachers of these classes need to be supported in their teaching, not in their dissemination of ALP support material. From Tim Blair, pro-choice. The Sydney Morning Herald's Elizabeth Farrelly is critical of risk-taking rural types. To inhabit the bush, especially as a climate change takes hold, is to make yourself fuel. Image ruined. Various reader responses in the UK Times to the recent beheading of a Muslim woman by her carrying face of Islam husband. Love from a distance. Age TV reviewer, Maria Cardi. Are we so blinded by a thirst for information that we can't love and support our fellow citizens from a respectful distance? Maria's love and support for her fellow citizens is touching, although conditional. If they're wearing an Australian flag, for example, she wishes they would go away and die. In the New York Times, Clyde Haberman charts a community's desperate struggle. Satirists have struggled with the ascension of Barack Obama for a while now. Clearly, some white comedians are pulling their punches out of fear of being accused of racial insensitivity. They were frightened of Bush, they remain frightened now. Leftist comedians are nature's rabbits. Race aside, many comics feel that any new president deserves to be cut some slack as an added inhibitor. Some have said this president is simply not his predecessor. He's difficult to satirize, Mr. Boyd said. The Japanese seem to have found an angle. From Tom Malaya, who asks, after all, how does one satirize a Chicago Democrat who ran for office as a reformer? It's simply impossible. Extreme weather, global warming always sounded lame, climate change is stupid, climate crisis was never going to catch on, so the Australian Conservation Foundation is going with a new phrase for the Poochie generation. Carbon sinks. The Times' Carl Mortish noticed that carbon is now less than €9 above its actual value. In July, a ton of carbon sold for €35, but today it fetches less than €9. In other shrinking number developments, it's now official. The casualty counts you have heard for the Palestinians during the recent war in Gaza were wild fabrications put out by Hamas terrorist organization and its allies and eagerly accepted and circulated by Western media. Disgraceful. If you can't trust Hamas, who can you trust? He'll never forget that special pen. It's sad that Labour holy warrior Bob Ellis's house burned down, even though it happened 16 years ago. The recent deaths of more than 200 people in Victorian fires now inspire renewed musings about himself from unmelted Ellis. We understand how Kosovan refugees felt, or Holocaust survivors, or Afghan boat people fished out of the sea with no trinket of the past, no photograph or heirloom to link them to who they were. Laying it on a little thick there, aren't you, pal? As commentator Elliot Ramsey writes, your property was properly insured, your bank account was intact, and you continue to live in the country of your birth, fully connected with your social and professional networks, and you spoke the language. Otherwise, yeah, you were just like a Holocaust survivor. Unnatural rocks. In case you were wondering about the extent of green madness in Victoria's councils, the Dacos family at Wallert were twice fined $567 in January after refusing to comply with council demands, arguing fire safety overrode council's green regulations. The Dacos family collected rocks from their fields and assembled them in piles several years ago after an approach from CFA. But Steve Dacos said council's planning department told him a pile of rocks is not in its natural state and therefore breached newly green wedge planning codes. And from Andrew Bolt, secularism bought to book. Not respect, but paranoia is now the mark of sensitive Britain. Librarians are being told to move the Bible to the top shelf to avoid giving offense to followers of Islam. Green faith, black forest. It's not Victoria that's been left dangerously unprepared for fire due to green madness. A decision to cancel almost half the burn-offs planned for New South Wales bushfire zones has put thousands of lives and properties in danger. Ridout Speak Out, the great love affair with Kevin Rudd that so neutered Helen Ridout as an advocate for business, may be over. Howard fires warning shot at Rudd. Kevin Rudd should be grateful that John Howard is so far so gentle with him. John Howard has accused Kevin Rudd of stretching the facts of the global financial crisis in an unsustainable economic argument to score a base political point. When Howard finally unleashes on Rudd's economic management, no doubt at a time when it's clear to voters it's failed, the effect will be severe on Rudd's reputation. Cowards voted for Obama. I'm not sure this is the best way for the Obama administration to spread goodwill among men. Though this nation has proudly thought of itself as an ethnic melting pot in things racial, we've always been and continue to be in many ways essentially a nation of cowards, said Eric Holder, the nation's first black attorney general. Hamas needs reinforcements after all. Two British surgeons writing in the Lancet's Global Health Journal have a novel idea. Why don't we hire soldiers to fight Israel? The people of Gaza are extremely vulnerable and defenseless in the event of another attack. If the international community is serious about preventing such a large scale of deaths and injuries in the future, it'll have to develop some sort of defense force for Gaza. It's stimulating having Rudd's ear. The Rudd government turns out to have given its most generous stimulus packages to its mates and advisors. Labour has increasingly relied on hired experts from the private sector and universities to shape its policy agenda, especially in the area of health, broadband, economic regulation, climate change, water and education, the analysis found. The opposition's new finance spokesman, Helen Coonan, said the $553 million awarded to consultants was extraordinary. Did you know that solar power actually creates more greenhouse gases than does nuclear? Jobs for bureaucrats anyway. As might have been predicted once the government got involved, mining magnate Andrew Twiggy Forrest has complained to Kevin Rudd that his plan to get 50,000 Aborigines into jobs is being jeopardised by federal government bureaucrats who are creating roadblocks and not sticking to their end of the deal.